Imagine an aircraft that's not just a piece of history, but still flying today, still training pilots, like over 60 years after it first took off. We're talking about this really iconic jet. They call it the White Rocket. Amazing speed. It's trained elite pilots, even astronauts. But there's more to it, you know. Unexpected engineering headaches, deep lessons about, well, human performance. It's quite a story.
Welcome to the deep dive. Really glad you could join us. This is where we take all that complex info, dig through expert sources, and pull out the stuff that actually matters, the surprising bits, maybe even the funny ones sometimes. So you walk away really getting it.
Yeah, and today we're diving into the Northrop T-38 Talon, a real workhorse. Our mission really is to look at its propulsion modernization program and the critical lessons, both engineering and human, that came out of keeping this, well, venting but high-performance jet in the air. We're pulling from conference papers, aviation safety analyses, good stuff.
It really is a story. I mean, the T-38 Talon, world's first supersonic jet trainer. Think about that. Maiden flight was April 59. USAF had it by March 61. They stopped making them in 72, built almost 1,200. And the amazing part, hundreds are still flying with the USAF. Out of what, over 1,100 they got? Plus NASA, right? They've got a fleet of 32. Astronaut training, chase planes for the shuttle. That's a pretty cool gig. And you see them elsewhere, too. Germany, Turkey, other places. Just to picture it, it's about 46 feet long, weighs just over 12,000 pounds fully loaded, but it hits Mach 1.08 at sea level. That's, what, 812 miles an hour? Fast. And that nickname, the White Rocket, totally earned. The climb rate is just up to 30,000 feet per minute. I mean, that's faster than an elevator, right? And probably a lot more exciting.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible. And what's interesting is how it was designed versus how things played out over decades.
Yeah.
The idea was simplicity, easy maintenance, quick turnaround. Like they made it so you could swap an engine in about an hour,
Yeah.
which is really ahead of its time. But then you get this paradox, right? Initially, it was seen as easy to fly. Fast forward to the 21st century. And suddenly it's the most challenging aircraft in the USAF inventory and somewhat unforgiving aerodynamically.
That is a paradox. Easy to fly becomes the most challenging. So was that a flaw in the original design or more about pilots changing? Or the missions?
I think it's mostly the latter. Pilots today, they're used to aircraft that do more for them, more automation, smarter systems. The T-38, it demands pure flying skills, stick and rudder, high speed, which is great for training, actually, but it really shows how the context, the expectations change around a design that stays mostly the same. And its longevity is just, wow. Its replacement, the T-7 Red Hawk, isn't expected until maybe 2034. That's nearly 75 years of service for the T-38. Just remarkable.
Keeping something that old and that high performance flying for so long, that's a massive job.
Which brings us to the PMP, right? The Propulsion Modernization Program. This was a huge effort, a 10-year contract, 2001 to 2010, run out of Hill Air Force Base, all about keeping this vital trainer going. And the upgrades were pretty serious, basically a big engine overhaul, new G85 engine kit, better afterburner, longer-lasting parts, plus a new fat lip air inlet, great name, and a new ejector. Trying to boost performance, reliability, for the long haul. They did the actual work on the planes at Randolph AFB. And by, August 2005, maybe a third of the fleet was already done?
Yeah, it was a massive program. And like a lot of these big, complex, long projects, it hit some snags pretty early on. Some inherent complexities started showing up. One really big factor, organizational churn. The government actually changed who owned the program, the whole structure, 3 times during that decade.
Wow, 3 times in 10 years. That sounds disruptive. How much do you think that constant change played into the technical problems they eventually found?
It's hard to say exactly, but it definitely didn't help. Think about it: losing knowledge, shifting priorities, who's responsible for what. It gets fragmented. Every time ownership changed, you kind of reset things, making it tough to keep momentum on solving problems. Plus, you had all these different players involved. GE doing engines, NASA working on the inlet, different air logistics centers managing parts. So integration was bound to be a challenge. And it tells you something that by August '05, they had to form an independent review team, an IRT, 10 senior USAF engineers, plus NASA and contractor support, specifically to tackle 3 major technical issues that had already surfaced.
Okay, so the upgrade is rolling out, but behind the curtain, problems are brewing. By 2005, serious enough for this special review team. Let's dig into those 3 big issues. Starting with the one that sounds most alarming, engine bay overheating. Yeah, this was serious. Lots of cockpit engine fire lights, 8 times on the ground, 32 times in flight, mostly during check flights, luckily, and actual overheat events, too. And it wasn't simple, not just one thing. It was like a perfect storm. The new ejector and the new inlet, they actually reduced cooling airflow in the engine bay and the keel. which meant the whole system had less tolerance for heat, little changes having big unexpected consequences. Then you had hot air leaking around the variable exhaust nozzle, the VEN, that's critical for heat management, plus just tired iron, as they called it, older planes, where cooling systems degrade over time, get leaky, and parts aren't perfectly identical. And crucially, the original airframe maker wasn't really in the loop on this part initially.
That's a really key point, isn't it? Like trying to put a brand new high-power engine in an old car, but the radiator's old and leaky. You change one thing, the engine, and suddenly the cooling system just can't cope. And what really stands out across all three of these technical problems is this recurring theme: a lack of good computer modeling. Math models. For the overheating, like you said, they literally had to build a thermal model. It just didn't exist for this specific updated configuration. So solving it took a big collaborative effort, ground tests, flight tests, and the recommendations were basically use this new model to figure out fixes, maybe change flight procedures first, adjust the fire warning sensitivity, separate fire from overheat.
Which leads right into the second big headache, SETOS performance. That's single engine takeoff speed. For anyone not familiar, SETOS is basically the minimum safe speed you need on takeoff just in case one engine quits. It's the faster of your normal two-engine speed, or the speed where you can still climb okay on just one engine. Crucial safety number.
Exactly. And the problem was, pilots just didn't trust that the upgraded planes could actually meet the performance requirements on hot days. Even though the new inlet was supposed to help. The initial tests, the contractor data, it just didn't fully prove it out. And guess what? The initial contractor model, they couldn't even calibrate it properly. It points right back to inadequate modeling again. But here's where it gets interesting. Edwards Air Force Base stepped up. They built their own performance model, did more flight tests, more rigorous. And they ultimately proved that, yes, the requirements were being met, actually exceeded. Performance was better by about 17 degrees F on hot days. So huge lesson there. You absolutely need solid performance requirements in the contract, and you need good modeling to back up and understand your flight test data.
Okay, third issue, engine reliability. Specifically, the J85 engine's mean time between removals, or MTBR. They wanted 230 hours between engine removals. But the modified engines, they were stuck around 155 hours, just not hitting the mark. And when they dug into why, well, it turned out the PMP upgrade was really focused more on maintenance schedules and cutting shop costs, not specifically on hitting that 230-hour number. In fact, that specific MTBR target wasn't even in GE's contract for the engine work. Oops.
Right, a pretty significant oversight.
Yeah, and the engine controls weren't improved either. Plus, most removals, like 86%, were unscheduled, driven by accessories, stuff like the fuel flow transmitter, quick change items failing. And, surprise, surprise, a maintenance model for this engine didn't exist at first either.
It's becoming a pattern, isn't it?
Definitely. The solution involved adapting an existing model, and recommendations were things like improve the gearboxes, the fuel pumps, the igniter system, and maybe look at performance-based logistics with the contractor to actually incentivize reliability.
So if you pull back from the specifics, what does all this tell us about managing these kinds of complex upgrades, especially on older systems? The analysis from the NDIA conference boiled it down to 5 big lessons. First, you need proper systems engineering. Early, continuously, not as an afterthought. Second, you need a clear boss for integration. Someone, government and contractor side, who owns how all the pieces fit together, avoids that fragmentation we talked about. Third, use interface control documents, ICDs. These are like the detailed blueprints showing exactly how systems connect and talk to each other. Crucial. Fourth, performance requirements like CETOs, like MTBR, they have to be nailed down in the contract, explicitly. And finally, the one we keep hitting, computer modeling, math models, absolute indispensable for design, for analysis, for validating tests, especially with complex systems, especially with aging aircraft where parts vary and things change. You need those models and you need to keep them updated. These are really fundamental lessons.
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating is while they were wrestling with all these engineering challenges, the T-38 itself was teaching different kinds of lessons, not just about mechanics, but about the human flying it. Airmanship. There's that great quote from a pilot. The T-38 is an easy plane to fly, but it's hard to fly well. And that challenge, that difficulty in flying it well, is what makes it such an amazing teacher of skills you can use in any plane. Like those runway illusions. There's this great story, right? A student pilot, cross-country, landing at a new airport, flares way too high, dangerously high. Instructor, ex-F-15 guy, grabs the controls, I have the aircraft, slams the throttles forward, hard landing. the cause. The runway was 200 feet wide, way wider than their usual 150-foot home base.
Yeah.
Made him think he was lower than he was, the wide runway illusion.
Yeah, classic.
And there's the opposite too, right? Narrow runways making you feel higher so you land short, or night approaches, the black hole messing with your perception. Universal stuff.
Exactly. Our eyes play tricks, especially under pressure. And the T-38 really hammered home lessons about handling emergencies, too. There's this story about a student completely freezing up during a simulated engine fire, just locked up. And the instructor, even with all his experience, admitted making mistakes himself because he was suppressing his own fear. The FAA actually talks about this psychological hazards in emergencies. Acceptance, like your mind just freezes, fear obviously, and that urge to save the airplane above all else, even if it means ignoring procedures. So the lesson is about mental toughness, sticking to the checklist, staying calm, even when things go wrong fast. Another big one the T-38 taught was staying ahead of the aircraft, avoiding getting behind. Situational awareness. There's an anecdote about a young co-pilot on an instrument flight just going too fast between close airports, basic navigation, getting overwhelmed. His buddy just quietly says, get that cross-check going. A reminder, constantly scan your instruments, stay proficient, stay aware. And some instructors were, let's say, creative. They'd test awareness by, like, flying near a mountain without enough altitude for maneuvers or tumbling the gyros to disorient students. The point being, don't just trust your instruments blindly. Use outside cues, sun, horizon, terrain. If something feels off, question it. And maybe one of the most critical is positive control exchange, making absolutely sure someone is flying the plane. Stories of low-level flights where a mumbled handover led to the plane descending because neither pilot was actively flying for a moment. Scary stuff. So the emphasis is always clear verbal command, maybe even a physical gesture. You have the aircraft. I have the aircraft. No ambiguity, ever. So what's the takeaway from all these human factors stories? It's not that pilots are dumb or that the T-38 makes people make mistakes. It's that these are human tendencies, cognitive biases, things we all do. The T-38 just happens to be a very demanding high-speed classroom where you learn these lessons fast and the stakes are high. Whether you fly at Mach 1.2 or, a quarter of that speed, these lessons about awareness, procedure, control, they apply to everyone. It shapes really solid pilots.
It really does bring it all together, doesn't it? This deep dive shows the T-38 PMP was like a real-world masterclass in systems engineering. It hammered home needing that early, constant systems approach, clear responsibility for integration, using those ICDs for documentation, getting requirements right in the contract, and that constant refrain about computer modeling, how vital it is, how sometimes you even have to build it when it's missing. And the parallel is so strong, just like the jet needs that rigorous engineering, modeling, maintenance. The human inside needs discipline training, constant awareness, managing that psychological pressure. Machine and human totally intertwined. One can't succeed without the other performing well.
Exactly. And looking at the bigger picture, the T-38, this amazing, enduring design, it kind of accidentally became this incredible teacher.
Yeah.
Not just about flying fast, but about how tech systems and people interact, especially under stress. Its challenges really highlight that even brilliant engineering needs constant oversight, and humans need to be adaptable and prepared. It makes you think about the hidden complexities, right? So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Where in your own world, maybe a project at work, something personal, even just dealing with information overload, do you see parallels? Where might you have some tired iron or maybe a lack of computer modeling, causing unexpected overheat issues or reliability problems in your own life? How could applying a bit of systems engineering thinking or just sharpening your own situational awareness help you spot those metaphorical firelights before they become real problems?
That's a fantastic question to end on. We really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the T-38 Talon. If you did, please do us a favor. Like this deep dive, maybe share with someone else you think would find it interesting, and leave a comment. It honestly helps us keep growing and reach more people like you.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in today to the Deep Dive.
And thank you for learning with us. We'll catch you on the next one.